Eala's heart rate spiked the moment Novak Djokovic walked toward her. She said so herself on record at a post-match press conference. And that one moment became the spark behind a wave of YouTube titles, none of which actually told you what happened. This isn't a story about racism. It's not a story about mistreatment. It's the story of a 19-year-old from the Philippines, ranked number 44 in the world, standing inside the Palacio de Cibeles in Madrid, and what that single encounter quietly revealed about where professional tennis is going next.
All Eileen Gu, Novak Djokovic, Simone Biles. I was just like, everywhere you look, there were stars, and everywhere you look, there are people who have made waves and touched lives and inspired so many. So just to be kind of in that room was a great pleasure for me.
On the evening of April 20th, 2026, the Palacio de Cibeles in central Madrid hosted the Laureus World Sports Awards. If you're not familiar with it, think of it as the Oscars of sports. And this edition was co-hosted by two people specifically chosen to represent where the sport has been and where it's going. Novak Djokovic, a 24-time Grand Slam champion, and Eileen Gu, a 3-time Olympic gold medalist in freestyle skiing. The room itself was stacked. Jannik Sinner was there, Elena Rybakina, Carlos Alcaraz, Aryna Sabalenka, and Colombian player Camila Osorio, who happens to be the first ever Philippine Women's Open champion. Eala was in that room too. She wore a cream Filipiniana gown, the traditional Filipino formal silhouette with those unmistakable turno sleeves, the wide butterfly construction you don't see anywhere else. The gown was designed by her uncle, acclaimed Filipino fashion designer Eala. In a room full of athletes wrapped in luxury house sponsorship deals, Eala walked in wearing her national heritage. But this story isn't really about the dress.
Alex, great job out there today. First match in these high altitude conditions.
Yes.
How did it feel?
It felt great. I think the intensity was really high throughout the whole match, so I'm really happy to have been able to pull through.
At some point during the ceremony, Novak Djokovic and Eileen Gu walked over to Eala and took a selfie. Eala posted it on her Instagram story with a caption that said, __, quote, _0, __ that image. Eala, right in the middle, flanked by both co-hosts, went viral in Filipino media the next day, April 21st. And as the headlines multiplied, they started to shift. YouTube titles began appearing with phrasing like __, quote, _1, __. And that's when things shifted, because Djokovic said none of that. What Djokovic actually said about Eala on the record during the 2026 Australian Open was different. He called the chaos around her first-round match on Court 6 a very good problem to have. He called her the biggest ever tennis player from the Philippines. He pointed out that hundreds of supporters couldn't even get inside the venue to watch her play. That's measured. That's specific. That is not a demand for accountability. It's not an allegation of racism. And it's not a condemnation of tournament organizers. The amplified version of those words exists in comment sections and engagement bait thumbnails, not in press transcripts. The day after the selfie went viral, Wednesday, April 22, 2026, Eala sat down for a post-match media session at the Madrid Open and gave the clearest account yet of what that Laureus encounter actually felt like. In her own words, quote 4, she called it quote 5, she called it quote 6, and she specifically singled out Eileen Gu, describing Gu as quote 7 and quote 8. Here's what Eala didn't say. She didn't describe Djokovic as some kind of advocate fighting for her cause. She didn't mention scheduling injustice. She didn't reference politics. What she described was a physical reaction, a heart rate spike, from standing close to two of the most decorated athletes alive. That's the verified record. Everything built on top of it is someone else's construction.
No, you seem to be very happy to be back on the clay. How was your relationship with the surface at the moment?
It's getting better every year. I think, in general, I'm a better player this year now at this moment than I was last year. So I'm really confident with that. Yeah, I've had some struggles on clay before, but I've also had some really great matches. So I'm really excited to see there's a couple tournaments left, so I'm really excited.
To really understand what that Laureus moment meant, you need to know where Alex Eala was standing competitively when she walked into that room. Her WTA ranking on April 21, 2026 was number 44, up 1 spot from the week before, but well off her career high of number 29, which she'd reached in mid-March 2026. Her early clay season hadn't gone as planned. She dropped in the first round at Stuttgart to Leylah Fernandez, then went out in the round of 16 at the Linz Open against Jelena Ostapenko. Madrid was the reset. Eala's stated goal entering the tournament was a deeper run, something that could protect her seeding position heading into Roland Garros. The total prize pool at the 2026 Mutua Madrid Open was €15,909,385, up 2.1% from the year before. Just winning one match was worth roughly 2.1 million pesos to Eala in converted prize money. Real money when you're running a full professional team across the global tour. One more thing worth knowing. Eala is a graduate of the Rafael Nadal Academy. That detail gets pulled into a lot of online narratives as evidence of some political advantage or favoritism. What it more accurately reflects is a decade of integration into European clay court tennis culture. Her Spanish fluency during Madrid press interviews, the kind that genuinely surprised local journalists, wasn't a PR move. It was what 10 years of immersion actually sounds like. And then came what happened next. The morning after the selfie went viral, Alex Eala walked onto the Estadio Arantxa Sanchez at the Caja Magica and beat Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova 6-3, 6-3. Pavlyuchenkova is 34 years old, a former French Open finalist, now ranked number 116 after a rough stretch on tour. The match lasted 90 minutes. Eala saved 2 break points early in the first set, then broke Pavlyuchenkova to love in the 5th game. She was clean on serve, composed in the rallies, and she handled the Madrid conditions. The high altitude, the thinner air that makes the ball move faster and kick harder with what one account described as ____9___ pure emotionless calibration. The day after her heart rate was seriously racing in the Palacio de Cibeles. Here's the read that isn't getting much attention. The Laureus adrenaline didn't throw Eala off. It might have done the opposite. The spike she described, that physical jolt of being close to Djokovic and Gu, a competitive system, doesn't just feel that and shut down. It registers it, and it uses it. The 6-3, 6-3, the next morning is at least consistent with that idea. That's a very different story from the one the thumbnails are selling. Her second-round opponent, 19th seed Elise Mertens.
Can you speak Spanish? Have you been working on that?
Oh, well, yeah, I've lived in Spain for a really long time already. And I did study Spanish in school there, so I do have some Spanish skills. It's just about, breaking that barrier of being shy, especially in the media. But yeah, I'm really trying to break past that barrier, as I said, and just be less shy and work on it a little bit more. Because having a third language is a great thing to have.
Here's the part of this story that almost nobody mentions. The sharpest irony of the entire Madrid 2026 conversation. Novak Djokovic wasn't even in the draw. On April 17, 2026, less than a day after tournament organizers had made what was described as a splashy announcement about his participation, Djokovic officially pulled out of the Madrid Open. He cited ongoing recovery from a shoulder and elbow injury he'd picked up at Indian Wells, where he'd lost in the 4th round to Jack Draper. His post on social media was brief. Madrid, unfortunately, I won't be able to compete at Mutua Madrid Open this year. I'm continuing my recovery in order to be back soon. Hasta pronto. Going into mid-April, Djokovic was sitting at number 4 in the ATP rankings. His 2026 season record stood at 7 wins and 2 losses, with no titles and $1,559,555 in prize money. His deepest run of the year had been the Australian Open final, where he lost to Carlos Alcaraz, the same Carlos Alcaraz who, on the evening of April 20th, picked up the Laureus Awards Sportsman of the Year award in the same room, at the same ceremony. Djokovic was present at the awards. Djokovic was absent from the tournament, and yet his footprint on the Madrid 2026 conversation is bigger than most of the players who actually competed. His withdrawal opened the field for players like Alexander Zverev and Casper Ruud in the ATP draw. But the cultural space his name left behind, the way Alex Eala's story gets shaped and shared online, that got filled by a selfie, a caption, and whatever story a particular audience was primed to believe.
It's available, you know. And then a week ago, I had this idea that I was like, I've always had a dream that kind of like when I'm in a red carpet, I'll wear what's called the Filipiniana. And it's a very traditional Filipino formal wear.
At their core, the digital narratives around Alex Eala and Novak Djokovic in Madrid 2026 are a case study in how facts get processed into something else entirely. Djokovic's actual words, measured, specific, warm, got turned into the raw material for headlines that reversed their meaning. Eala's honest, physically detailed account of meeting her heroes became the hook for a controversy she never described as one. But here's the question the engagement bait never gets around to. What happens if Eala actually runs deep in Madrid? If she gets past Elise Mertens? If she advances? If she arrives at Roland Garros with the seeding that keeps her away from the dangerous early draws? What does the story look like then? She was number 29 in March. She slipped to number 44 after Stuttgart and Linz. Madrid is the correction. And the 6-3, 6-3 against Pavlyuchenkova, played the morning after her heart was seriously racing in the Palacio de Cibeles, is the first real data point of that correction. The selfie caption was sandwiched between greatness, but the story was never about standing between two legends. It's about what you do the next morning when the cameras are on somebody else, whether Alex Eala can carry all of it. The Filipiniana, the Laureus Room, the viral moment, a number 44 ranking and a Nadal Academy education, all the way to a Roland Garros seeding that actually protects her path through the draw. As of late April 2026, that question is still completely open.